Good afternoon, class. This is Professor Ford here. I just want to take a few minutes to go over what we discussed this past week on the message boards, and maybe clarify a couple things that came up a couple times. Um, First off, great job as always. I sincerely appreciate the willingness of so many of you to share your professional and personal experience. It really does a lot to, I think, to demonstrate, especially to those students who maybe are not working in the public sector right now, the actual kind of practical implications of some of the budgetary and financial management topics that we are discussing. In particular, those of you working in state government that were able to weigh in on your personal experiences with the Wisconsin state budget process. I really do appreciate that, and the way you're able to answer some of the questions that other students posed just made for a really nice week on the message board. So thank you for that. A couple things that really stood out to me this week is the interest everybody had in debt and in municipal bankruptcy. And as was pointed out in the message boards, even though I said that municipal bankruptcy isn't about debt, it is about debt, right? It is about, we have those, as I discussed in lecture, there are these certain trigger points, these certain situational categories that have to be met if you are going to file for a municipal bankruptcy. And the big one being unable to meet financial obligations. And certainly having an unsustainable amount of debt is one of the reasons that you may not be able to meet your financial obligations. And certainly the outcome of a municipal bankruptcy is the refinancing of debt, which is obviously related to debt. So hopefully that helps clarify things. Yeah, I hope that helps to clarify things. The bottom line is that a lot of the questions that in questions asked and topics posed in our discussion on municipal bankruptcy are difficult to answer because it is still very much a gray area. It's an area where there are a few notable examples, but really not the n size, to borrow from research methods. The n size, so the number of cases where you can really start to make broad conclusions about how it works. Each municipal bankruptcy that has occurred tends to be fairly unique. And those federal statutes, as I laid out, are very open to interpretation. Our discussion of the state budget process, I think, was really good. I think it did a good job. You guys all did a good job demonstrating how the connections between politics, policy, and structure all kind of come together when we are creating these massive pieces of legislation that fund the day-to-day operations of our state government. I also had a good time watching your presentations of the state budget papers. I think you really did just an excellent job there with the presentations in general. I guess not in general, the presentations specifically. I know that it's a weird thing to kind of record yourself talking, as you can see right now. I'm familiar with it, but I know that I come off as weird sometimes because we all do. At least we think we do when we hear our own voice and see our own face on a video camera, on a video screen. But you did very well there. You were very straightforward. You all kept it in the time frame. Couple of you maybe lost a few points for not specifically telling me what you wanted to do, and that's important. So this is one area where you don't want to be ambiguous. If you're interpreting a budget paper like this, or really any type of you're in a situation where a financial decision has to be made at your workplace. If you are presenting the facts in your recommendation to a superior or to a common council or a board, you don't want to be ambiguous, because if you're ambiguous, that's going to demonstrate to the person that's consuming the information, so the person that is hearing the presentation, that you don't quite know what the answer is, or maybe you haven't figured it out yet, or you don't feel strongly one way or another. That's going to get picked up on, and it's going to make your work less effective than it actually should be. So now that only happened a few times, and it wasn't anything egregious, but do keep that in mind as a takeaway here, that any time that you have to present these complex financial informations to a superior, like I said, or to a board where a decision has to be made, you make sure that you make that decision easy for them. You walk them through, just like you did in this exercise, what you want to do and why, but be clear about what your preference is and your recommendation is, because if you're not, you're not going to get the desired outcome. And really, that whole principal-agent relationship, the importance of having professionals that are insulated from politics, that have the expertise. Well, if they're not presenting that expertise clearly to the non-experts, their expertise is not going to shine through. It's going to be dismissed, and that is going to be to the detriment of everyone, in my humble opinion, and in my even more humble experience. So, nice job. Again, enjoyed everything this week. Now it's really time to get down to crunch time for your final project. So I know there was a few questions on the message boards about specifics regarding your final project, but I want you to keep a couple things in mind as you move forward. One is there's no one best way to do this, and I know that invites ambiguity into this final project, and that can be frustrating, especially when you think, well, there's no ambiguity in budgeting. In fact, I was just saying a second ago not to be ambiguous when you're presenting. But budgets are so context specific. Indicators, the language used, the culture of the place can be so specific that it's very, very hard to generalize those specifics. It's not hard to generalize the concepts, and that's why there are so many ICMA indicators that you're looking at. And that is why there are some very strict parameters on your final project, like how long I want it to be, and making sure that you are demonstrating critical thought. Right? That stuff's not very ambiguous, but sometimes the specifics can get a little difficult, and that's part of the process. But a couple things to keep in mind is, one, remember, you are not going to be held responsible via your grade for budgets that don't have the information that ICMA says you should have. You're not going to, again, if you find every indicator, you're going to be the first one ever to do that. Okay, part of this assignment is to be critical of the budgets that you are reviewing and pointing out that there is information that would have been useful that you couldn't find. And that's a perfectly acceptable answer when you can't find things. Remember, the language is not always going to be the same in the ICMA guide, or the ICMA, the way the ICMA indicators are presented, as opposed to what's used in the specific budgets. The key thing for you to remember, is that you want to compare those same pieces of information across the two budgets. So make sure that you're not comparing two different indicators across time, because then you're really not learning anything. The third thing to remember is that part of this is just doing the best you can with imperfect information. In a way, it mirrors the budget process, meaning that you are peeling the onion. There's always going to be some uncertainty there, and that's okay, but you want to make sure that you're upfront about what you know and what you don't know. I've seen this professionally where people will get a little too confident, or they feel like the people that they're presenting the information to wants them to seem more certain, and they'll exaggerate things, or they'll make more out of data that they'll make broad conclusions out of pieces of information that really don't warrant those broad conclusions. So I want you to be cautious. I want you to be open about what you're finding, and I don't want you to fret that you don't find every indicator, because it's impossible. So with that, good luck over these last few weeks. We're going to have a much lighter lecture load on the last week of class, because I want you focused on getting that final done. Very much look forward to checking those out. So have yourself a great rest of the day. Thanks for listening.